and welcome to Newfoundland and Labrador Studies 2205. This is Unit 3, The Country Grows, Section 4, Lesson 6, on the Spanish flu. My name is Miss Fleming, and I'm here with you for this course, so let's get started. As I mentioned in Lesson 3, I wanted to take a moment to remind you about how to best take care of yourself when learning about tragedy. This lesson, while tragic, is important to the history of Inuit people in Labrador and to the population of this place as a whole. We now have great empathy and connection with this tragedy, considering we have also lived through a global pandemic in our lifetime. So please, if you need to take a break at any time, please take one. Okay, let's talk about it. Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918 to 1919 killed between 20 and 40 million people worldwide, making it one of the most destructive outbreaks of infectious disease in history. To give you some comparison, COVID-19 has killed approximately 6 to 7 million people worldwide, while Spanish flu killed 20 to 40 million. In Newfoundland and Labrador, it killed 600 people in 5 months, including more than 30% of the Inuit population in Labrador. Many survivors of Spanish influenza also experienced heart and respiratory troubles for the rest of their lives, so even if they did survive, it greatly affected them for the rest of their life. Let's talk about the beginning of the outbreak first. The pandemic arrived on the island of Newfoundland on September 30th, 1918, when a steamer carrying 3 infected crewmen docked in St. John's. 3 more infected sailors arrived on October 4th, and they traveled by rail to St. John's for treatment. Of course, being on a train possibly spread to people on that train as well. A doctor subsequently diagnosed the first 2 locally acquired cases the following day, and they were sent to hospital. And within 2 weeks, newspapers in St. John's reported that hundreds of people had been infected in the city. At this time, the reason why it spread the way that it did around the world, which previous pandemics had not, was because this was during the First World War, and a lot of people were traveling back and forth between North America, Europe, Africa, and all over the world. Then, of course, it spread to Outport, Newfoundland. By mid-October, the medical officer of health had closed the schools in St. John's, theaters, concert halls, and other public buildings to help prevent the virus from spreading. By early December, 62 people had died from Spanish influenza in St. John's, but no new cases were appearing. Part of this was because the spread of the virus had slowed because of the closing of schools and public buildings, much like what we experienced during March of 2020. The situation in Outport, Newfoundland was vastly different, as fewer medical facilities and practitioners were present to help combat the disease. And before the end of the pandemic, 170 people in Outport, Newfoundland had died. Now let's talk about Labrador. The pandemic struck the hardest in Labrador, which experienced a very high mortality rate. Only 1% of the population of the island was killed by the disease, while 10% of Labrador's population was killed. The virus spread by visiting boats with infected crew members. It first appeared in Labrador, in Cartwright, after a mail boat docked on October 20th, 1918, so about a month after it arrived in St. John's. By early 1919, the disease had killed 69 of the area's 300 residents. This image that you're seeing on the right is of people burying people who had died in a mass grave in North River, which is about 12 kilometers from Cartwright. Now let's talk about the decimation of Okek and Northern Labrador. A mission ship, the SS Harmony, brought the infection to Hebron on October 27, 1918. The virus quickly spread through the village, killing entire families and leaving dozens of children orphaned. By November 19th, 86 of the 100 Hebron residents were dead, and 74 people had died in the surrounding communities as well. The SS Harmony also brought the virus to Okek. Within hours of the ship's departure on November 8th, many people in the village were showing signs of disease. By the end of December, 204 of the 263 residents were dead, and it had also spread to the nearby hunting camps. By early January, the virus had left the area, and survivors were left with the task of burying the dead, but the ground was frozen. Survivors had to make the difficult decision to dismantle and burn the community in its entirety due to the squalor left in the virus's wake. The remaining residents moved to Nain, Hopedale, and to Hebron to help rebuild that community. I was drastically affected by watching the documentary, which I have posted for you below, to do with your activity. I watched it a few years ago first, and it really stuck with me. When you watch it, you may find it upsetting, you may find it disturbing, but we must take care of ourselves and be mindful of that, but also we cannot shy away from it, because it is part of the history of this place, and we have to honor the people that it affected and still affects today. Now it's time to review. I'm going to ask you to please watch that documentary and complete the activity posted below in Brightspace.